So hello and welcome to the video, and welcome to Hamad International Airport in Doha, Qatar. I still can't decide if that teddy bear is cute or terrifying, but I think it's probably the latter. So it's been a long day. It's about midnight, and like almost everybody, I'm connecting through Doha today, and my inbound flight experienced a medical emergency which delayed us for about 4, perhaps 5 hours, meaning it took 22 hours to get here. But I've had a shower, I've had something to eat, and I'm ready to go again. And going again will involve taking Qatar Airways, again in business class, from here in Doha up to London Gatwick. Business class, but it's not a Qsuite, it's Qatar's second tier business product, which is still pretty good, and I'm really looking forward to sharing that experience with you. It's about a 7-hour flight, and my main priority will be to get some sleep on this flight, but I should still be able to share the food and beverage experience with you before I join the land of Nod. So if you'd like to see what Qatar's business class service on its 787 Dreamliners with its second tier business product, stick around.
Hi, I'm Matt. Over the last 25 years, I've travelled a lot. I've lived in 5 countries on 4 continents. I've flown over 1.3 million miles. I've visited over 100 countries, every American state, but I'm nowhere near done. So hit subscribe to see where I go next, and perhaps get some inspiration for your next trip. Most passengers flying on Qatar Airways transit through Doha, so the schedules are designed to clump arrivals and departures together to facilitate shorter transfer times. With our 5-hour delay, we arrived midway between those clumps, so the airport was very, very quiet. I was the first person at the transfer security point, and I was quickly through and off to the lounge. I could make a 10-minute video just about the lounges in Doha, as it's all a bit complicated. For years there were 4 lounges: the Al Marjan for Qatar's business class passengers and the Al Safwa for their first class passengers. As I was travelling in business, I had access to the Al Marjan lounge, although confusingly none of the airport's signage uses the word business or first alongside the lounge names, so you do need to know where you're going. They're also a little tricky to find, but there's always staff around to direct you to the correct escalator. Access to the lounge is validated at the foot of the escalator. For years, Qatar limited access to their lounges to just those travelling on their flights, in the way that BA doesn't allow One World status holders into the Concorde room in London. But as One World status holders still needed to be accommodated, Qatar built 2 more lounges, one for Sapphire and one for Emerald One World members. They were okay, and I thought the Emerald Lounge was actually pretty decent, but neither were world class. Over the last few years, when passenger levels have been down, Qatar relaxed the rules to allow status holders into the Al Marjan business class lounge. But with travel rebounding, Qatar has built 3 new lounges for One World status holders, which opened a couple of days after I visited. So long story short, the Al Marjan lounge will return to only be accessible if you are travelling on Qatar in business class. But Qatar now sells a discounted business class fare without lounge access, which still can be a bit confusing. I told you it was complicated. Anywho, the lounge is large, and because I arrived during a lull in flights, it was very quiet when I arrived. I headed straight for the showers to refresh after my inbound flight. Very good shower facilities, although there's not that many of them, so there may be a wait at busier times. I had about 4 hours between flights, so after freshening up I headed to the bar on the mezzanine level. A nice space to hang out, but very surprisingly the bar had no gin. Gin isn't a popular drink in some corners of the world, but a bar not having any gin is a first for me. The mezzanine level also houses a buffet, but I knew that there was a sit-down restaurant at the other end of the lounge, so I decided to head there. It was still very quiet, so I had no problem getting a seat, but the menu was really disappointing. Only sandwiches and salads were available. This was about 10 PM, so not exactly the middle of the night, and although the smoked salmon tartare was delicious, the offering wasn't up to expectations and really wasn't good enough. I lingered for a while in the restaurant and then strolled around a bit. There are quite a number of different zones within the lounge to suit your mood as you wait. But over that hour, the lounge had gotten really quite busy.
Qatar is an Islamic country, so alcohol service is limited to a couple of areas of the lounge, so I headed back to the mezzanine level to have another drink and see if the buffet offered anything more substantial than the sit-down restaurant. But the place had filled up so quickly that they were restricting access to the buffet area. A somewhat chaotic waitlist system had been implemented, but I managed to convince them that I only wanted to go to the bar, so they let me through, and despite the crowd waiting downstairs, the bar upstairs was virtually deserted. It was all quite unsatisfactory and nowhere near the premium experience you might expect. I never really did explore the buffet, although I could see that there were some more substantial dishes available. And after another hour, I decided to go for a wander around the terminal before boarding. The Al Morjan Lounge is very highly regarded and it is an attractive place visually, but the food and beverage offering was really pretty woeful on this visit. I can only conclude that even the mighty and wealthy Qatar Airways is not averse to a hefty chunk of cost cutting. And when the lounge filled up, it wasn't a relaxing and refreshing place to be. It just didn't work as a premium lounge. There was a day or two before the new status lounges opened, so hopefully things have stabilised a little as the guest load reduced, but apart from the shower, I can't say I enjoyed my time there. My flight departed at 1:40 AM, which was peak time for flights heading up to Europe, so the terminal was also really quite busy. I couldn't find anywhere relaxing to sit and wait, so I went through to the gate. Staff and a few passengers were wearing masks, but there was no mandate that they were required in the terminal or on the flight. And surprisingly quickly we were called forward for boarding.
Hello.
2 fingers were in use, so the business cabin had its own access route through the plane's front door, always a nice benefit. Onto this 8-year-old Boeing 787 Dreamliner into the business cabin, a 1-2-1 configuration with all aisle access. No central overhead bins, so there's a great sense of space in the cabin. If you didn't know about the Qsuite, you'd think that this was a pretty decent business class. The seat looks good despite the design being a few years old. Over your shoulder is a reading light, literature storage where you'll find your menus. I'll share them in full at the end of the video. A sanitation kit, amenity bag and a bottle of water. Beneath is a pop-out remote for the TV, a cool feature here being that you can show the moving map on the remote device while watching something else on the TV. A USB port and seat controls, and in front of you is the large fixed TV, the table and underneath the inevitable foot cubby. I was just about able to rest my feet on the ledge when seated, but remember I'm 6'4". Under the seat controls to your side is a plug socket and a decent sized storage bin. I didn't really film the screen or the entertainment options, but this was the same system with the same variety of TV and movie options that I'd enjoyed on the Qsuite flight. To your right in the armrest is another storage unit in which you'll find your headphones. And above you are more lights and personal air vents. A 2-point seatbelt, which is possible only because there's an airbag in that seatbelt, without which you'd need a 3-point belt. There is a little bulk to the airbag, but it's no real inconvenience. The table unlatches and slides towards you, opening up into a decent sized surface for eating and working. You can slide it forward to exit the seat when the table is deployed. The amenity kit contained the same stuff as the Qsuite flight had offered, delivered in a bag rather than in a box. Unisex again, with lotions, a sleep mask, socks and earplugs. Dental kits were available in the bathrooms. The seats feel cocooning when you're in them, but there's no wall or extension to the seat to create additional privacy, so you're actually fairly exposed to the aisle. A bit of an omission if you compare the seat to other similarly configured cabins. A pre-departure glass of Child's Heidsick champagne and a pre-packaged cold towel. There's probably some hygiene-driven rationale as to why the towel is pre-packaged, but I don't really mind. It was very refreshing after fighting my way through the crowds in the terminal. The champagne went down very well too. It was well past 1 AM Doha time, but as I'd flown in from LA, where it was still early afternoon, I didn't really know what time it was. We pushed back on time and taxied for takeoff. Doha is a spectacular airport to take off from during daylight hours, not so much after dark. The menus are shown in full at the end of the video, but as this was a 2 AM takeoff for a 6-hour flight, the dinner offering was abbreviated, so once again I missed out on Qatar's famous Arabic meze starter. I don't mind this pragmatic approach, although it is something to be aware of if you are hoping for your flight to have the full Qatar food and beverage offering. I went straight for a glass of wine as I'd very much enjoyed the Shiraz on my last flight, and the same wine was offered, served with some warm nuts. If I'd not been filming, I would probably have called it quits there and gone flat for some sleep, but I was a little peckish as the lounge offering had been so poor, so went for the tasting plate. The one-tray dinner was served pleasantly quickly. If you were really hungry, there'd be enough there to satisfy most appetite, or you can graze around what you fancy. Then into my provided Jim Jams for a kip, a two-tone grey and navy affair which was really quite comfortable and is an amenity not common in business class, which does further differentiate Qatar's offering. And while I'm in the loo, it's a decent enough space, clean, with some premium amenities and a window. This was when I changed back out of my jammies, hence the daylight. The business cabin was dark for the vast majority of the flight, but I did take some footage and have whacked up the light when editing, hence the graininess. This was the 800 version of the 787, so there were 5 rows of business up front with another 2 seats behind me. They are probably short straw seats to be avoided as they're sandwiched between the loos and could be inches away from the economy bassinets behind you. The entryway by the second doors has been turned into a kind of bar area, nothing like Virgin offers and nothing like the bar you'll find on Qatar's A380, but somewhere for a change of scene on longer flights. Couples would probably choose middle seats, and although they're angled away from each other, you can still communicate with your neighbour. The bed converts flat via a single button, always tricky to film. Pretty decent width at the head and shoulders when flat, although the foot cubby is quite tight vertically and tapers to a point which does constrict you a little. You do have a sense of privacy when flat, although the cabin has quite an open layout, so privacy isn't in any way this seat's selling point. I got perhaps 3 hours of decent kip, probably all that is realistic on a flight this short. I'd asked to be woken for breakfast, again mostly so I could see what the offering looked like, and to be honest it was a little underwhelming. Tasty enough, but somewhat lacking in ambition, particularly if you'd skipped dinner in favour of some sleep. When there was a little daylight, I was able to look at the window, which on the 787 has this odd electronic shading system. No physical shade, but you can change the tinting via these controls. One big upside is that you can just about make out what's going on outside even when the tint is deployed, although what frustrates people is that the controls can be overridden by the crew. They can decide that the entire cabin must be dark, which gives you, the paying passenger, no ability to look out of the window if you want. Some may love this, but I find it a bit of a pain. And with some light in the cabin, I was quite surprised to find even more storage, ideal for shoes, although my size 11 boots didn't fit. I have no criticisms of the seat's storage on this flight. Great views of Margate, Broadstairs and Ramsgate as we crossed the Kent coast with a direct routing into Gatters. That had been the only destination available as a redemption that connected with my LAX to Doha flight, but Gatwick can be a more pleasant place to arrive, particularly if you're on one of the first flights in. I'd paid only 90,000 avios plus taxes and fees of £154 for the 2 flights from Los Angeles to Doha and then on to London. If you apportion the cost between the flights based on miles flown and value an avio at 0.8 of a p, this flight cost me the equivalent of £246, which I'm sure you will agree is really good value. This flight on its own would have cost 43,000 avios, plus a very reasonable £90 in taxes, which is the equivalent of £434. That's only £12 more than a cash fare in economy on that route. As I say in this video, Qatar opting avios opens up some really interesting opportunities. We may well have been the first flight into Gatwick that morning, so I barely broke stride through the immigration hall. So conclusions. This is Qatar's second best business class product. The seat is some way behind the Qsuite, but it is still very, very competitive with other business class seats out there. It wins hands down against BA's legacy club seat and is clearly superior to any 222 offerings like Lufthansa's. Qatar does have its own 222 configuration on their Airbus A330s, so beware of them when booking. Looking at the experience beyond the seat, the lounge experience was poor. Hopefully something that fixes itself naturally with the opening of the new lounges in Doha, but it was really quite disappointing for my visit. This flight also was not the best demonstration of Qatar's catering ex-Doha. That was down to the scheduling of the flight, and I understand and respect why it was done, but it's another thing to be aware of if booking a shorter overnight routing to Europe. Tasty enough, but not the full experience. And the crew were a little distant and standoffish, something I've noticed on other Qatar flights, although it hadn't been a problem inbound from Los Angeles. The crew acted like they were a little scared of the customers, so didn't proactively engage in the way you might want. There was minimal small talk and certainly nothing resembling banter. The service was completely transactional and just felt a little hollow. I'm being pretty tough here, but these are things that did cap the experience at a notch below perfection. But overall, Qatar offers an experience that is in contention to be considered as perfection, which the vast majority of other airlines don't come anywhere close to. And I would travel on Qatar again in a heartbeat, both in a Qsuite and in this more open configuration. So thanks for watching, I hope you enjoyed it. Please leave the video a like if you did, and leave me a comment. Have you flown on this version of Qatar's business class? Would you? Please subscribe if you're new, and if you'd like to support what I'm doing more directly, I have a Patreon page, the link to which is in the description below. So thanks again for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one. Goodbye.